Let me tell you something no one has told you before. The devil doesn't have horns or a tail. The truth is much, much worse. He might just have the most beautiful face you have ever seen. And since I have your attention, let me go back to the beginning. It all started when I was 19 and asked myself a question that seemed harmless, but which opened the door to hell. Why do some people have everything and I have nothing? If you've ever asked yourself the same question, be careful. That's how my life changed forever. And perhaps what I'm about to tell you will change yours too. My name is Marcos, or rather, it was. Today I no longer know who I am. And before I continue this confession, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, because that's the only way you won't miss anything I'm about to reveal. I was born in a small town in rural Pennsylvania, in a house where luxury was having meat for Sunday dinner. My dad was a bricklayer, with a hunched back from carrying too many cement bags. My mom was a washerwoman who woke up at 4 in the morning to handle the laundry of the town's wealthy families. At 18, I was just another invisible poor kid. Know those guys who walk past you on the street and you don't even notice? That was me. No money, no prospects, nothing to attract the attention of the pretty girls I saw on TV or walking downtown. But I had something. A hunger that gnawed at me from the inside, that made me wake up at 3 in the morning in a cold sweat, that made me mentally count other people's money every time I saw an imported car go by. I wanted everything. I wanted the car, the house, the clothes, the respect. I wanted people to look at me when I entered a room. I wanted to be able to buy anything without looking at the price. I wanted to have power, and it was this hunger that led me to the crossroads. You know the story, right? Midnight, a secluded place. Call the devil's name 3 times. It sounds like something from a movie, but when you're desperate, any hope feels real. It was a Thursday in March. I remember it perfectly. It had rained during the day, and the dirt in the cornfield was still wet. The smell of damp earth mixed with the sweetness of the corn. It was almost poetic if it weren't for the despair consuming me. I walked to the center of the crossroads, right where the 4 paths met. The wind made the stalks sway, creating a constant rustle that seemed to whisper my name, Satan. My voice came out weaker than I had expected. Nothing. Satan. Louder. Now almost a shout. The wind stopped. For a moment, an absolute silence took over the place. No crickets, no rustling leaves, nothing. Satan! I yelled for the 3rd time, my voice echoing through the fields. I waited. 1 minute, 2, 5. Nothing happened. I felt like an idiot, a poor, desperate young man yelling alone in the middle of nowhere. I turned my back and started walking away. I'm leaving, I murmured, more to myself than to any supernatural being that might be listening. I didn't know that phrase would seal my fate because, you see, they don't appear when you call. They appear when you've already given up. 3 days later, life was normal. Work at the battery factory, that chemical. Smell that stuck to my clothes, the boss yelling. A salary that barely paid the bills. Nothing had changed. Or so I thought. Friday night, I was with my friends at Joe's Bar, our go-to hangout spot. Cheap beer, plastic tables, music that was way too loud. It was our only weekly luxury. I was complaining about work as usual when a black sedan pulled up right in front of the bar. It wasn't just any car, it was the kind of vehicle you see in movies, you know. Tinted windows, an impeccable body reflecting the neon lights of the dive bar. The door opened and a man got out. I swear on everything holy. I've never seen anyone so handsome in my life, and I'm a straight guy talking. But this guy had something magnetic. Perfectly coiffed blonde hair, blue eyes that seemed to shine even in the dim light of the bar, and a suit that cost more than my 3 months' salary. He came in, ordered a whiskey, an expensive one obviously, and sat 2 tables away from me. The entire night I felt his eyes on me, not in a threatening way, but as if he had known me for years. My friends didn't notice anything. They kept drinking, talking trash and complaining about life. But me, I couldn't take my eyes off that man. When we left, at almost 2 in the morning, he was still there, drinking the same whiskey, watching me with that subtle smile that didn't reach his eyes. On Saturday, I woke up with a strange feeling, like something had changed, but I didn't know what. I went to work. Yes, I worked Saturdays too, overtime to supplement my miserable salary. And that's when things got real. I was in the assembly sector, focused on my job, when I felt a presence. I looked up and almost dropped my tools. It was him, the man from the bar. He was walking through the factory machines as if he owned the place. His suit was impeccable, even in the midst of all that industrial grime. The other workers kept going, as if they didn't see anything. He stopped in front of me. Up close, I noticed his eyes didn't blink, not once. "Hello, Marcos." His voice was soft, almost hypnotic. "We've been listening to your plea." My blood ran cold. "We've... plea?" Before I could ask anything, he put his hand on my shoulder. His fingers were ice cold, even in the heat of that factory. "We'll be waiting for you at 6 o'clock, he whispered in my ear. And he walked away, calmly, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. I spent the rest of the day feeling disturbed. I asked the other workers if they had seen that man. No one had seen anything. No one knew what I was talking about. That's when it hit me. The crossroads, the plea. We've been listening to your plea. At 3:45 p.m., I left work with shaky legs. On my way to the bus stop, the black sedan pulled up beside me. The back door opened by itself. I looked at the dashboard clock. 6 p.m. on the dot. The man was inside, smiling, as if he were completely certain I would get in. And you know what? He was right. Inside the car, the silence was absolute. No engine noise, no street sounds, as if we were in a bubble isolated from the world. The interior was too luxurious to be real. Flawless leather, gold details that seemed to glow with their own light. And that smell, how can I describe it? It wasn't perfume. It was something deeper, something that messed with parts of my brain I didn't even know existed. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice weaker than I wanted it to be. He smiled. Perfect teeth, obviously. "We are many, Marcos. What we want is for you to join us. We, in the plural again." "What do you mean, many? And how can I join you, the two?" Answer came in that hypnotic voice, each word chosen with surgical precision. "This body is merely an intermediary between us and you. We are a legion, I and my brothers. We want you to join us in the service of our dear master, Lucifer. In exchange, you will receive all the riches and enjoy all the pleasures of the earth while you are in the flesh." My heart raced. It was real. It was actually real. Everything I had desired, dreamed of, begged for, was being offered to me on, say, a platter, but something in the back of my mind was screaming danger. What about God? The question came out before I could think. If you exist, God must exist too. What happens to me after I die? Am I really going to burn in hell forever? He let out a laugh, not a loud one, but something low, almost musical, as if I had just told the most innocent joke in the world. "Marcos, which God are you referring to? The great rival of our beloved master, Lucifer?" His eyes glowed with a light that came from nowhere. "Relax. It's all just a big chess game. Lucifer, the great architect, only desires what is good, happy, and pleasurable for humans. His rival, this other god, is the one who is evil. He uses tragedies and miseries to gain followers. He was even capable of mutilating his own son just to get believers. His logic was perfect, seductive. Every word planted seeds of doubt in my head. And as for eternal fire and hell, it's just another tactic he uses to scare his rivals and enemies. It made sense. In my 19-year-old mind, desperate and hungry for a better life, it made all the sense in the world. "What do you want me to do?" He smiled and held out a black briefcase, executive style, real leather. Gold details that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. "Enjoy this week, but only open the briefcase when you get home." I got out of the car with the briefcase in my hands, my heart beating like a drum. The sedan disappeared around the corner, but the smell remained stuck to my clothes. At home, I locked the door and opened the briefcase on my bed. Money. More money than I had ever seen in my entire life. Hundreds, 50s, 20s, all brand new, smelling of fresh ink. At the time, it must have been about $250,000. Along with the money, there was a large envelope. Thick, brownish paper with a strange texture. It felt like skin. And the smell. Good God, what was that smell? Rotten flesh, but subtle. You only noticed it when you got very close, a smell that stuck in your nose and wouldn't go away. I threw the envelope aside. At that moment, all I cared about was the money. I grabbed a few bills and went out to a nightclub. That night, I was a king. I bought drinks for everyone, met women who wouldn't have even looked at me before, and stayed until the club closed. For the first time in my life, I tasted power. In the following days, I bought a brand new car, rented a house in a wealthy neighborhood, and got a new wardrobe. I lived like a millionaire, imagining that the pact had already been sealed. Little did I know it was just the appetizer. A week later, settled into my new life, I was at home watching TV when the lights went out. A power outage, I thought. I lit a candle and kept watching. That's when I saw the silhouette. A woman standing in the bedroom doorway, motionless as a statue. The flickering candlelight created dancing shadows around her, but she remained perfectly still. My heart almost stopped. Almost. Who are you?" I stammered, my voice coming out as a whisper. She moved then, one step, two, as if she were floating instead of walking. I turned on the bedroom light and almost fell off the bed. She was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. Not beautiful in a magazine or movie way, beautiful in a supernatural way, as if every feature of her face had been sculpted by a perfect artist with infinite time. Porcelain white skin, black hair that seemed to absorb the light, dark eyes that were hypnotic. She wore a long red dress with details that sparkled like diamonds. "I am the administrator of your contract," she said in a voice that was pure music. "You can call me Impusa." A strange name, but who cares about names when you're standing in front of a woman like that? "I need you to get that envelope that was with the money." I went to the drawer where I had stored the smelly envelope and handed it to her. Impusa placed it on the nightstand and started to approach me. Her perfume was intoxicating. I couldn't identify the scent, but it messed with something primal in my brain. With every step she took, I felt an attraction that went beyond the physical. When she kissed me, the world disappeared. I can't properly describe what happened that night. It was as if every cell in my body was touched by pure electricity. She showed me pleasures I didn't know existed, took me to places the human mind shouldn't be able to reach. Around 6 in the morning, the intercom rang. Impusa was standing, wearing completely different clothes, an elegant business suit. The red dress had disappeared without a trace. "Aren't you going to answer the door?" she asked, smiling. At the door stood a man almost 7 feet tall. He must have been around 20, but his eyes looked centuries old. He walked in without asking and made himself at home on the couch as if he owned the place. Impusa came toward me, took my right hand and began to suck on my index finger. The sensation was strange, pleasurable, and disturbing at the same time. That's when I looked down. Her feet had changed. They were no longer human feet. They were golden, shaped like horse hooves. Beautiful in a bizarre way, but definitely not human. Before I could react, she bit my finger. Her teeth had also transformed, sharp as razors in rows like a shark's. The pain was instant and intense. Blood gushed from the wound, but Impusa carefully collected it and drew something on my chest. An inverted cross made with my own blood. The giant man approached with the smelly envelope and held out a pen that seemed to be made of bone. "Sign with your blood," he ordered. His voice echoed as if it came from a deep well. The text was already on the paper. I just needed to sign. I Marco's full name. Surrender myself to Lucifer, the great architect and lord of this world. I renounce God and agree to serve the true master in exchange for the earthly pleasures promised to me. My soul is the price I willingly pay. My hand trembled over the paper. A part of me, small but still alive, screamed not to do it. But the money was there, the new house, the car, the endless possibilities. "I won't be able to live without all this," I murmured to myself, and I signed. The moment the blood ink dried on the paper, I felt something shatter inside me, as if a piece of my soul had been violently ripped away. When I looked up, the giant man had disappeared. Impusa, too. No trace that they had ever been there. Only the smell of rotten flesh remained, stronger than ever. 40 days passed in relative normalcy. I enjoyed the money, lived the life I had always dreamed of, but deep down, I expected something else to happen. That's when the phone rang. A professional, polite female voice. "Mr. Marcos, this is from the Helios Corporation. We need to schedule a meeting with you. It's about the agreement you recently made." I didn't need to ask what agreement. I knew exactly what it was about. The Helios Corporation occupied 3 entire floors of a downtown office building. Right at the reception, I realized this was no ordinary place. The employees moved with an almost robotic precision. The plants were too perfect. The paintings on the walls showed landscapes that seemed to move when I wasn't looking directly at them. I was led to a circular meeting room. A huge oval table with 20 chairs. 19 were occupied by men who turned to me in perfect synchronization when I entered. They all smiled at the same time. "Marcos," said who seemed to be the leader, a middle-aged man with graying hair. "Take a seat. You're part of the family now, and in this family we take care of each other." Each of them greeted me by name, as if they had known me for decades. They spoke of details from my life that I had never told anyone. My elementary school, my first crush, the scar on my left knee. "This corporation is our hobby," the leader explained, "a front for us to meet when necessary. In reality, we are one of the largest organizations in the world." They handed me a platinum credit card and a bank statement, $5 million deposited into my account. "It's just the beginning," they smiled in unison. That same day, I was given a director position. In the following days, I was introduced to influential politicians, businessmen I saw on television, famous artists. They all had the same look, a glint in their eyes that wasn't entirely human. I realized I wasn't the only one who had made the pact. There were many of us, an invisible network that extended throughout society. I was inducted into a high-ranking Masonic lodge. I attended dinners where they decided the outcome of elections, the value of the dollar, and which laws would be passed by Congress. My opinion, influenced decisions that affected millions of people. Power was more addictive than any drug. It was around this time that I met her, a famous actress, one of those women every guy in the country dreams of meeting. I won't say her name. Even after everything, I still have some sense of self-preservation. We dated for months. She was smart, funny, caring. She almost made me forget how we had met. She almost made me believe it was possible to be happy in this new life. Until that night in London. The party was at a mansion on the outskirts of London. Medieval architecture, like something out of a Gothic horror movie. Pointed towers, gargoyles on the corners, windows that looked like empty eyes. At the entrance, they gave us black masks and asked us to undress completely. It was a ritual, they explained, a tradition of the house. Naked and masked, we were led down a stone corridor that spiraled downwards. Torches on the walls created dancing shadows that seemed to have a life of their own. The air grew heavier with every step. The underground hall was both luxurious and disturbing at the same time. Red tapestries on the walls, golden chandeliers, furniture that looked centuries old. Everything was bathed in a reddish light that made everything seem drenched in blood. In the center of the hall was a circular bed. On it a woman stood, her wrists tied to an iron bar above her head. A black cloth covered her from the navel up, leaving the lower part of her body exposed. 5 muscular, naked men surrounded the bed, waiting for a signal. When they saw me, they began. I was invited to participate. At first, I hesitated, not out of modesty, but from a strange feeling that something was wrong. Very wrong. But the atmosphere of the place, the other participants, the situation itself, everything conspired against any moral hesitation I might have had. When it was my turn, they removed the cloth from the woman and untied her arms. It was my girlfriend. The shock was so great that I froze. She came up to me, kissed me softly, and whispered in my ear, "You're not the only one with little secrets." The rest of the night was a limitless orgy. Things I can't describe here, no matter how much I wanted to. Pleasures and perversions that would redefine any concept of morality. But as I participated, a part of me watched and understood. This is how they control. This is how they trap us. Through complicity in sin. The relationship ended that night. Not because of moral judgment. I no longer had that. It ended because I realized there had never been a relationship at all. Just another tool of control. At 22, I was already tired. Tired of the orgies, tired of the falseness of the people around me, tired of the loneliness that money couldn't fill. That's when I met Helen. She was different. She came from a traditional family, had solid principles, and believed in God without fanaticism. She was pure, in a way I had forgotten existed. I fell in love with her like I had never fallen in love with anyone. It wasn't just physical attraction or admiration. It was something deeper, as if she brought out parts of me that I thought had died. We dated for 7 years. 7 years of constant lies on my part. She believed I was a successful businessman, that my wealth came from smart investments and hard work. She never knew that I continued to participate in the rituals, the meetings, the decisions that shaped the country. She never knew that every dollar I spent on her smelled of sulfur. We got married when I was 29. The ceremony was in a small, simple, beautiful church. As we exchanged vows, I felt something burn in my chest, exactly where Impusa had drawn the inverted cross with my blood. Helen always wanted to be a mother, but she couldn't get pregnant. Year after year, appointment after appointment, the doctors couldn't find an explanation. I suspected the reason, but I didn't dare to say it out loud. It was only after 11 years of marriage that she managed to get pregnant with our first child. 2 years later, the second one came, Peter and Michael. When I held Peter for the first time, something changed inside me. A feeling I hadn't felt in over a decade. Something like unconditional love. The same thing happened with Michael. For the first time since the pact, I questioned if I had made the right choice. Michael had just turned 2 when I received the visit. It was a Saturday morning. Helen had taken the kids to her mom's house, and I was enjoying a few hours of peace when the doorbell rang. At the door, one of the organization's leaders, a man I had known for years, always polite, always elegant. But that day, there was something different in his eyes, something hungry. "Marcos," he said, walking in without being invited. "The time has come to demonstrate your loyalty to the Master." My blood ran cold. I knew this day would come, but I had always pushed the thought into a dark corner of my mind. "What do I need to do?" He smiled. A smile that revealed teeth sharper than they should have been. "Your youngest son, Michael. He must be offered as a sacrifice to our beloved Lucifer. It's an honor few receive, Marcos. Proof that you are special. To us." The world stopped spinning. I literally stopped hearing my own breathing. "No," the word came out as a whisper. "No. No, never, not ever." His smile widened. "Marcos, you don't understand. This isn't a request, it's an order. The pact you signed includes this clause. You owe us everything you hold most precious." Then I'll undo the pact," he laughed. A laugh that echoed through the entire house as if it came from several people at once. "Pacts can't be undone, Marcos. Only renegotiated. With interest. Screw the interest. Screw everything. I'm not giving my son to you." He calmly stood up, adjusted his jacket and walked toward the door. "Are you absolutely sure? Because once I walk out this door, there's no turning back. The consequences will be final." I looked at the photo of my children on the side table in the living room. Peter, 4 years old, with that gap-toothed smile. Michael, 2, in my arms. "I'm sure." "Then so be it." The door closed behind him with a sound that reverberated through the whole house. Like a gunshot, or like a coffin being sealed. I told Helen everything that night. Everything. The pact, the money, the rituals, the organization, the orgies. I expected her to grab the kids and run. I expected screaming, crying, despair. She just held my hand. "I knew something was up," she said calmly. "I always knew. But I also knew that deep down, you were still a good man." "How can you be sure?" "Because a bad man wouldn't have refused to give up his son. A bad man wouldn't be here, confessing everything, desperate to get rid of it." Helen was a practicing Catholic. She said if I repented with all my heart, God would forgive me. She said there was a way back. I wanted to believe it. I desperately wanted to believe it. We started going to her church. At first I felt like an intruder. The priest's words echoed hollowly. The prayers seemed to go nowhere. But slowly, something started to change. The constant feeling of a weight on my chest lessened. The smell of rotten flesh that had followed me since I signed the pact grew weaker. I started using the cursed money for charity, hospitals, orphanages, nursing homes, as if I could cleanse every single bill with positive actions. For 3 weeks, I felt almost normal, almost human again. That's when Helen disappeared. It was a normal Tuesday. Helen had gone out to do some grocery shopping while I stayed home with the kids. Peter was playing with his toy cars. Michael was sleeping in his crib. 2 hours went by. 3, 4. Helen never took that long. I called. Her cell phone. No service. I called her mum. She hadn't gone there. I called her friends. No one had seen her. The first night was despair. The second, panic. The third, pure terror. On the fourth day, the police found her car abandoned on a dirt road 30 miles outside of town. The trunk was open. Her purse was untouched in the passenger seat, but there was no sign of Helen. The investigators talked about a kidnapping. They told me to wait, that they would probably receive a phone call with a ransom demand. The phone call never came. 2 weeks later, a fisherman found parts of a human body floating in the river. The forensics team confirmed through DNA testing. It was Helen. But the full report destroyed me inside. She had been dismembered, while still alive, cut into specific pieces, following a ritualistic pattern that I immediately recognized. It was the same kind of sacrifice I had witnessed at the organization's meetings. They killed my wife in the same way I had seen others being killed. At the police station, when they handed me her personal belongings, I found something that hadn't been there before. A brownish piece of paper with that unmistakable smell of rotten flesh. A message scrawled in what looked like blood. The pact remains. The consequences have only just begun. After Helen's funeral, the house changed. Not physically. Everything was still in the same place, but something sinister had taken up residence within the walls. It started with small details. Doors I was sure I had closed would appear open. Lights would turn on by themselves in the middle of the night. The temperature of the house would fluctuate for no apparent reason. Sometimes a glacial cold in the middle of summer, sometimes a suffocating heat in the winter. The children felt it first. Peter, 4 years old, started waking up crying every night, talking about dark men who stood in the corner of his room. Michael, still a baby, would cry uncontrollably whenever the sun set, as if he could perceive something I couldn't see. But I saw it. God, how I saw it. They were shadows, not silhouettes or tricks of the light. They were living shadows, humanoid, forms made of pure darkness that moved independently of any light source. They appeared in the periphery of my vision, always in the corners of rooms, always watching me. At first I tried to ignore them. Post-traumatic stress, grief, guilt, any rational explanation would do. But when the shadows started getting closer to the children, I couldn't pretend they didn't exist anymore. I found Peter talking to one of them one night. He was sitting on his bed speaking softly to something in the dark corner of the room. "Who are you talking to, son?" "The man who knows Daddy," he replied innocently. "He said you did bad things before I was born." My blood ran cold. What kind of things? He didn't want to say. But he said that soon he's going to take me and Michael to the place where Mommy is. That night I couldn't close my eyes. I sat in a chair between the boys' bedrooms, a crucifix in each hand, praying every prayer Helen had taught me. The shadows multiplied. It was no longer just one or two, there were dozens. They occupied every dark corner of the house, whispering among themselves in a language I didn't understand, but which made my skin crawl. I sought help at the church. The priest listened to me patiently, but I saw the skepticism in his eyes. He talked about trauma, about the need for psychological therapy, about how grief can create hallucinations. I looked for other churches, evangelical, Pentecostal, spiritualists. They all welcomed me with promises of help, but nothing worked. The shadows just laughed at the exorcisms, the prayers, the herbal baths. It was as if my past had created an armor against any kind of spiritual protection. The boys got sick on a Friday. High fever, vomiting, seizures. I took them both to the hospital, where the doctors did every possible test without finding an apparent cause. Maybe it's viral, the pediatrician said. We'll keep them under observation for a few hours. Peter pulled my arm when I thought he was sleeping. Daddy, the dark men are here too. I looked around the hospital room. It was late at night. The lights from the hallway created long shadows through the ajar door. And there they were, more numerous than ever, filling every dark space, moving like dense smoke, slowly approaching the beds where my children rested. We're leaving, I said, picking up Michael. Sir, you can't take the children now, the nurse protested. We're leaving. In the parking lot, I put the boys in the car and sped away with no destination. I just wanted to get away from that place, from those shadows, from the nightmare my life had become. Peter was better talking normally. Michael would stop crying whenever I sang the songs Helen used to sing to him. Maybe we have a chance, I murmured to myself. Maybe we can start over somewhere else. That's when the truck appeared. I was driving on the road that looped around the city, the same one where they had found Helen's car. It was almost midnight, not much traffic, good visibility. The truck came into the oncoming lane. It wasn't an accident. I saw the driver deliberately turn the wheel toward me. I saw the smile on his face, illuminated by my car's headlights. I swerved sharply to the right. The car left the road, hit a tree, and rolled over 3 times before coming to a stop upside down in a ditch. I woke up in the hospital 2 weeks later. My spinal column was fractured in 3 places, permanent paralysis from the waist down. Peter and Michael died on impact. What's worse than death? Living when everything that gave your life meaning has been ripped away from you. I spent 6 months in the hospital, useless physical therapy, experimental surgeries that didn't change anything, psychologists trying to convince me there were reasons to keep living. When I finally came home, to the same house where I had been happy with Helen and the children, I realized the shadows had never left. On the contrary, now they occupied every space. They were no longer discreet. They walked openly through the rooms, sat on the couches, and moved objects around. They spoke directly to me, in English now, with voices I recognized. It was the voice of the man who had offered me the first pact. It was Impusa's voice. It was the voice of the organization's leader. You had everything we promised you, Marcos, they whispered as I tried to sleep. Money, lust, power. Now we're collecting our share. You've already collected everything, I answered. My wife, my children, my soul. Not everything, they laughed in unison. The most important part is still missing. We're waiting for the day we come to get you. I lost all the money in less than a year. Lawyers specializing in recovering assets from former members of the organization showed up with documents I didn't remember signing. The house was mortgaged to pay off debts I didn't know I had. The car was seized for back taxes. Today I live in a small studio apartment, supported by a miserable government pension. The wheelchair creaks with every movement. The pressure sores are constant. The back pain never stops. But none of that is worse than the loneliness. Or rather, the lack of loneliness. Because I'm never alone. The shadows are always here, reminding me of every wrong choice, of every moment I could have backed down and didn't. Why am I telling you this? Because I have to. Because maybe in some way my testimony can prevent someone from making the same mistake. I know many of you are thinking, oh, but this is just a story, it's not real. Others might be thinking, man, but he had everything I ever wanted. Money, power, beautiful women. Let me be clear, I had all that. For a few years, I lived like a king. I had access to pleasures you can't even imagine exist. I influenced decisions that affected millions of people. I slept with women who were every guy's fantasy. And you know what I would give to go back in time and still be that poor 19-year-old kid, working at the factory, drinking cheap beer at Joe's bar? I would give everything. Everything. Because nothing is worth the price I paid. Helen was right, there was a way back. God truly forgives, but I didn't have enough time to walk that path. 3 weeks weren't enough to undo 15 years of a demonic pact. And now it's too late for me. But maybe it's not too late for you. You want to know what they're really like? how they work. First, they are real. More real than anything in this world. They're not metaphors, they're not psychological symbols, they're not manifestations of the collective unconscious. They are conscious, intelligent, and infinitely patient entities. Second, they don't show up like you expect. No horns, no tails, no red skin. They show up as the most attractive, well-spoken, and convincing people you have ever seen. Because they know that beauty is more seductive than horror. Third, they don't technically lie. Every word they said to me was true. I really did have money, power, and carnal pleasures. The problem is that they omit the important details, like the fact that their pleasure comes not from what they give you, but from what they take from you afterward. Fourth, they are organized. It's not some lost demon offering random pacts. It's a corporation with a hierarchy, protocols, contracts. They control companies, influence governments, and manipulate the global economy. The organization I worked for truly exists and has more power than you can imagine. Fifth, once you sign, there is no escape through conventional means. Lawyers can't break spiritual contracts. The police can't protect you from supernatural entities. Medicine can't cure curses. The only real way out is genuine repentance and total conversion, but even that has a price. And they will do everything to stop you from getting there. I know many of you who have read this far are in a similar situation. To me at 19, poor with no prospects watching the rich get richer while you can barely pay the bills. I know some of you have already researched pacts, crossroads, and how to get everything you want in life. Please, please don't do it, no matter how desperate your situation is, no matter how much you think you need money or power, no matter how attractive the offer seems, the price is always greater than you can imagine. And they always collect. There are other ways to get what you want. Hard ways that require work, patience, maybe luck, but ways that don't cost your soul. Because in the end, when you're alone in a wheelchair surrounded by shadows whispering promises of eternal torment, you'll realize that nothing, absolutely nothing, is worth more than peace of mind. Nothing is worth more than sleeping peacefully at night. Nothing is worth more than looking in the mirror and recognizing the person you see reflected there. Nothing is worth more than your soul. I'm writing this on a Tuesday night. It's 3:17 a.m., always 3:17 a.m. I don't know why. It's the time when the shadows are most active, most talkative. They're here now, as I type. 3 of them sit on the couch. 2 lean against the wall, one right behind me reading over my shoulder. They won't believe you, the one behind me whispers. They'll think it's fiction. Some will, I reply aloud, and maybe that's enough. My intention in telling this story isn't to scare you, it's to warn you. It's to show that there are paths in life that, once taken, there's no turning back. If you've made it this far, then maybe there's hope. Maybe you're the kind of person who can still learn from others' mistakes before making your own. Or maybe you're like I was at 19, too hungry to heed warnings, too desperate to care about the consequences. If that's the case, well, at least when you get to where I am, you'll remember that someone tried to warn you.